Point number 1. On your very first day of the bootcamp, you will receive an email. This email will congratulate you on being accepted and also give you a link that you will have to use in order to sign up to the platform that you will be using to complete all your coding assignments and exams for the rest of the week. This is called the Embark Platform. The very first thing that you have to do on the platform is to create an account. You have to use the email that you used to register and write your test with. So make sure that you have access to that email address. Point number 2. Once you have signed up and successfully logged onto the Embark platform, on your left-hand side you will see a task tab. This tab will list all the coding exercises that you have to complete for that given day. These are all labeled as code. Furthermore, you will have a quiz that you need to complete labeled as quiz, and finally you will have to complete an exam. This means that each and every day you will have 3 tasks that you must complete. Rule number 1. The very first thing that you need to understand about the exam is that you are not allowed to use ChatGPT. This means that you are not allowed to use any AI software during the exam or the bootcamp itself. If you are seen using ChatGPT, you will be immediately disqualified and sent home. Okay, so with that said and done, let us start with the exam questions. Again, keep in mind that this is day 2 of the bootcamp. Your exam will be made up of a combination of multiple-choice questions, short coding questions, and some opinion-based questions. Keep in mind again that we are coding in Python. Question number 1. Which keyword is used in Python to define a function? To answer this question, you need to understand what functions in Python are, how do we create a function, how do we call a function, how do we pass the inputs of a function into a function, and how do we return the output of a function? So to answer this question, you need to make sure that you know what functions are in Python and how they work. Question number 2. What is the major difference between lists and tuples in Python? To answer this question, you need to understand what data structures are in Python. What do we mean by a data structure? What are the 4 types of data structures in Python? What are the similarities and differences in these data structures? How do we create these data structures? How do we modify the data inside of these data structures? So make sure you understand data structures in Python. Question number 3. Which of the following is true about functions in Python? Again, this question is similar to question 1 in that it requires an understanding of functions in Python. Again, I repeat, make sure that you understand functions in Python, the theory and the practical application of functions. Question number 4. How do you access the first element of a list named myList? This question is similar to question 2 in that it requires an understanding of data structures in Python. You need to make sure that you understand what a list is. How do we create a list? How do we modify the data inside of a list? What are the common methods that we use for a list? Example: append, insert, sort. So, once again, make sure you understand your data structures. By question number 5, what will the following code snippet output? This question is testing a very fundamental skill that you need to have. This is the ability to read and understand Python code. But to perform this, you need to understand the basics of the Python programming language. What are variables? How do we create variables? What is a tuple? How do we create a tuple? How do we modify the data in a tuple? How do we slice a tuple? How do we print a tuple? Question number 6. What does the len function do when used with a string? To answer this question, you need to make sure that you understand what a function is. Then you need to understand what we mean by a string. How do we create a string in Python? How do we modify a string in Python? What are different functions that we can use to modify and get information about a string in Python? Make sure you understand strings in Python, what they are, and how to work with them. Okay, so the next important questions that we need to study and understand are the short coding questions. Question 1. Write a Python function named isEven that takes a number as an argument and returns true if the number is even and false otherwise. In summary, This code defines a function called isEven that takes a single number as input and checks if the number is even. If the number is even, i.e., divisible by 2 with no remainder, the function returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. The function uses the modulus operator % to determine if the number is even. Question 2. Given a list of numbers, write a Python function named SumEvenNumbers that returns the sum of all the even numbers in the list. This code defines a function called SumEvenNumbers that takes a list of numbers as input and returns the sum of all the even numbers in the list. Sir, the function initializes a variable to keep track of the sum of even numbers. It then iterates through each number in the list, checks if the number is even, using the modulus operator %, and if it is, adds it to the sum. Finally, the function returns the total sum of the even numbers. Question 3. Write a Python function named longestAtString that takes a list of strings as an argument and returns the longest string in the list. In summary, the function initializes a variable to keep track of the longest string encountered so far. It then iterates through each string in the list, compares the length of each string with the current longest string, and updates the longest string if a longer one is found. Finally, the function returns the longest string. Question 4. Write a Python function that takes two lists and returns true if they have at least one element in common and false otherwise. This code defines a function that takes two lists as input and checks if they have at least one element in common. The function loops through each element in the first list and checks if that element is present in the second list. If a common element is found, it returns true. If no common elements are found, after checking all elements, it returns false. Write a Python function that takes a list and returns true if it contains duplicate elements, and false otherwise. The function uses a set to keep track of the elements it has seen so far. It iterates through each element in the list, and if an element is found in the set, meaning it has been seen before, the function returns true. If no duplicates are found after checking all elements, the function returns false. Question 6. Write a Python function that finds the second smallest element in a list of integers. In summary, this code defines a function called secondSmallest that finds the second smallest element in a list of integers. It first checks if the list has fewer than 2 elements, returning none if it does. The function initializes two variables, smallest and second smallest, to hold the smallest and second smallest values, initially set to positive infinity. It iterates through the list, updating these variables as it finds smaller elements. If second smallest is still positive infinity after the loop, indicating no second smallest element was found, it returns none. Otherwise, it returns the second smallest element. Question 7. Write a Python function that takes in a number and returns how many digits are in it. The function first converts the number to its absolute value to handle negative numbers, and then converts the number to a string. By returning the length of this string, the function effectively counts and returns the number of digits in the input number. Question 8. Write a Python function named CountElements that takes a list of elements and prints each unique element along with the number of times it appears. The function uses a dictionary to keep track of the count of each element. It iterates through the list, updating the count for each element in the dictionary. Finally, it prints each unique element and its corresponding count from the dictionary. Question 9. Write a Python function that takes in a number and returns true if the number is a prime and false otherwise. A prime number is a number greater than 1 that has no divisors other than 1 and itself. The function first checks if the number is less than 2, returning false if it is. Then it checks for factors from 2 up to the square root of the number. If any factor is found, the function returns false. The function continues and checks for factors from 2 up to the square root of the number. If any factor is found, the function returns false. If no factors are found, the function returns true, indicating that the number is prime. Question 10. Write a Python function that merges two sorted lists, producing a single sorted list. The function uses two pointers to track the current position in each list and an empty list to hold the merged result. It compares elements from both lists and appends the smaller one to the merged list, advancing the corresponding pointer. After one list is exhausted, it appends the remaining elements from the other list to the merged list.
Alright.